Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this morning for this webinar on employment. We're very glad that you have logged in, and it's good to see the numbers of attendees going up. I'd like to let everyone know that all our panelists are already in the room and ready to have this discussion. We're glad that you are here with us. We're going to give a minute or two so that we have uh, majority of the attendees in before we can begin. But it's an absolute pleasure to have each one of you. Let me use this time to just take you through one or two things. Today we have an opportunity to have our say on employment and work using the Q&A tab that appears at the bottom of your screen. That is for those who are joining us via the Zoom platform. So if you have any question, if you have a comment, just go to the bottom of your screen. You will see a tab labeled Q&A. Type your question there, type your comment there. The panelists will be visiting that tab in order to respond to any questions that are there. If you are on social media, just type your question or comment on the platform where you're joining us from, and we will be able to take note of that question or that comment. The rapporteuring team will be monitoring what's going on in the Q&A and also what's going on social media. And those will form part of the report that will come out at the end of this webinar. So your contribution is very important. So please let us enjoy the benefit of your knowledge. Please share it with us. We will also would like to take your opinion on a couple of things, and we'll do that through polling. So a poll question will pop up on your screen every 30 or so minutes. And when that does appear on your screen, please go ahead and take the poll. Choose the option that applies most to you, and it will take maybe a minute or so. Only the attendees can participate in the poll question. The panelists, the Electoral Commission, we shall only view. But yes, so I'll be letting you know when it is time to take the poll question. All right, again, good morning and welcome to this webinar organized by the Center for Advanced Strategic Leadership, CASO. This is the 7th webinar in a series of webinars organized by CASO under the theme COVID-19 Opportunity to Thrive. If you missed any of the webinars that came before this, reports for that are available. Just send an email to connect@casothinktank.org. That is connect@casothinktank.org. However, you can go to the CASO Facebook page and all the videos are there. So if you'd like to watch instead, just go to the Facebook page of CASO and the videos are all there. In fact, after this, the video for today's webinar will be there as well. So you can go back and do some revision. Before we go any further, I'd like to invite Mrs. Phoebe Sevume to set us off with a word of prayer. Over to you, Phoebe.
Thank you, Lord our God. We bless your holy name. Thank you for this time. We declare Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 that there is a time and a season for everything, for every activity under heaven. Lord, this is the time you have set for this activity, and we bless your holy name. We bless your holy name according to Philippians 1:6, that we are confident that you, Lord our God, who began this good work in us, you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ. This which you have started to do, you carry it on. We bless your holy name according to Psalm 102:13, that you have compassion. It is time to arise and have compassion on our nation, on our people, Lord. It is time for you to show favor to us. We ask that, Lord our God, you, the God of all graces, you restore us, you restore our institutions, you restore our nation to her destiny, to that which you called us to be. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Phoebe, for starting us off with a word of prayer. I'd just like to let you know who we have on the panel today. We have Mr. Brian Jumba. He's an economist and he'll be delivering the Castle Think piece. We have Mr. Wandera Martin. He's a director, labor, employment, occupational safety, and health from the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. He is our special guest for today's webinar. We have our discussants, Mr. Moses Segawa. He's a specialist in employment and employee benefits. Ms. Lucille Kasalamwa. She's a supervisor, employment management, KCCA. Mr. Gideon Padagawa, executive director, private sector foundation, Uganda, and Mr. Douglas Opio, executive director, Federation of Uganda Employers. Those are our panelists. And before we go any further, I would like to invite a member of the board of directors of the Castle Think Tank, the Honorable Dr. Benson Obuo-Gwal, to give us opening remarks. Over to you, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, and thank you everyone who at this discussion. I would like to use this opportunity on behalf of Castle, the board and management, to welcome all of you who have found it fitting to join this particular webinar. As Gabriel said, this is one of the many in the series that we have conducted. And I want to appreciate our repeat participants who have not ended. This goes to show that there is a lot of good things that these webinars are doing. I want in a very special way to thank our panelists for today who have decided to set aside their good morning to come blessed with and discuss this very, very important topic. As you are all aware, COVID has come to change so many things. We at Castle decided to look at the positive side of things. And so we decided not to just sit and complain and whine and lament, but we decided to do things more positive and see what we can do to contribute, especially in terms of ideas, because every good thing, you know, as you may be aware, start with idea. So Castle is positioning itself, or already has positioned itself, to be a thought leader in very many spheres. As you probably been following, for those of you who have been following, we have been handling different issues, different topics from diverse spheres and things that affect community of ours. So I want to really welcome you once again, and do hope that by the end of this webinar, we will all be there. The panel is very rich, and I want to really appreciate them. In a special way, I want to welcome my friend Martin Wandera. Those of you who do not know, he's actually an honorable member of parliament in the past parliament, but he went back into the civil service. So I want to thank you all, and let's roll on. As you are aware, as you have been told, this will eventually form part of reports that we are already compiling as Castle, and they will go to relevant people who we believe will pick some of the things to, you know, implement to make our country better. Once again, I want to welcome you, and back to you, Gabriel.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Now, would like to go straight into our discussion for today. And for those joining us on social media, Facebook and Twitter, today we're using the hashtags CASO webinar and hashtag Thrive Employment. So use Thrive Employment and CASO webinar as the hashtags so that we can follow your questions and your comments on social media as well. Allow me to begin with this quote that I found. It's a quote from an article in 2015. This article is titled Uganda, the most entrepreneurial country in the world. With an entrepreneurship rate of 28%, Uganda ranks first place with almost double the entrepreneurship rate of Thailand, who comes in second at 16%. It's estimated that 77% of Ugandans are below the age of 30, and 64% of those who are aged 18 to 30 are unemployed. So we are very entrepreneurial. We have very many young people, but many of these young people are unemployed. You might add 5% to that figure, add or subtract 5%, but we will still stand in a worrying position as a country. And COVID-19 has worsened that position. Some of the job losses from COVID-19 are reported to be permanent. So as a country, we have to think critically about unemployment and what we can do in order to ensure that those that are unemployed can earn a living. We have banked very much on the oil sector, but as delays on making the final investment decision continue, and as the global prices of oil come down, we need to assess whether oil is still a safe bet for the country. The National Development Plan 3 states that with adequate investment in people, Uganda will harness the demographic dividend. Today we talk about work and employment. And I would like to begin by inviting Mr. Brian Jumba, who will be giving us the think piece put together by CASO. I was informed that Brian was having some challenges, but let me go ahead and introduce him. And if his internet continues to disturb, we will have somebody do the presentation on behalf of Brian. But Brian is an economist with a passion for development and governance. He's a director of Synergy Square Consultants, associate consultant with Joada Consultants and Impact Associates. He served in various levels as a staff manager and consultant with several sectors, including health, education, agriculture, finance, civil society, governance, energy, and business. He has also served as board member, Celebrate Hope, overseeing Hope Coffee Company and Hope Circle. He has also served as a board member, Community Mental Health Initiatives, an organization based in Mulago Hospital that works to support mental health in communities. He's the current director, Cake Shop Uganda, Kampala Cake Fair, and Kekli Uganda. He's an Oxide of class 19 and is married to Asha Batenga Jumba, and they've been blessed with 4 children. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brian Jumba. Brian, are you able to hear us?
Yes, thank you very much,
Okay.
Gabriel. Glad to be joining the forum right now. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are here to talk about unemployment and how the whole spectrum is unfolding in this in the COVID era. As Gabriel has introduced the topic, unemployment in Uganda is set to increase with the advent of COVID, and according to PwC, it is estimated that 50,000 jobs are to be lost in the formal sector, while in the informal sector, more than 1 million jobs are likely to be lost. Now, SDG number 8, Sustainable Development Goal number 8, states and it provides for full productive employment and decent work for all as a measure to ensure that generally the world is a better place. And with the oncoming unemployment, we are seeing that a lot of people are yet to are going to be losing jobs. And to put that in perspective, Uganda has a workforce of 19.1 million people. That's our total workforce, of which 52%, according to the Ministry Labor, 52%, that is 10.1 million people, are unemployed. And so we are going to be seeing an extra 1 million in the informal sector, plus 50,000 extra jobs being lost as a result of COVID. However, with this discussion, we want to state that this is a challenge which, with coordinated effort and strong leadership, we can be able to mitigate its worst effects, which is the reason for today's discussion. Looking at the impact on the livelihoods and the economy, first of all, COVID-19 was sudden. Its onset was likely unexpected. It has been completely painful, and we need to say that it has taken a mental and physical toll on many of the people who have been left unemployed. It will be difficult for us to adequately calculate or give the proper cost of what this will cost to our economy, because it is not a straight line measure. We can very easily look at the numbers which have been given. For example, 700,000 people in the tourism industry are currently rendered redundant. When you look at the cross-sectoral interactions, that number will multiply, because for every one person who is employed in the, for example, in the tourism industry, they have a border man who will take them to work. They have somebody who serves them food at work. They might be having somewhere where they buy food in the market. And all those people are affected as a result of this one job being out of the economy. So it is not easy even to quantify the effect of this unemployment on the economy, because of the cross-linkages between sectors, between countries, both on the global scale and on the regional scale. And one of the key problems that comes in is that unemployment is usually seen as an individualized problem. Many of the times, governments in growing economies tend to give an arm's length to this problem. And most of the times, we haven't seen adequate policy initiatives to address issues in this area of unemployment. Then when you flip it on the other side, most of the times the unemployed people, or people who find themselves on the other side of that divide, have no job or losing their job because of different reasons. Many times they have to carry the load themselves, because usually they are blamed individually, either for not having done the right courses, not being fully mobile in their kind of work uptake, not being able to take up low-income jobs and things of that sort. These are things that we have had. And it comes with a lot of responsibility and stigma for people who have been caught on the other side of the spectrum. Now, we need to look at why creating more jobs is critical for us as a country. Uganda's fertility rates were one of the highest in the world, and right now we are realizing the good news is, yes, it is going down, and therefore creating a higher value population as a result. And this is something that we could look at to be able to utilize that opportunity to create enough jobs with a higher labor productivity for our young workers, and as a result to take care of the demographic dividend that rises out of this advantage. The demographic dividend is something that, as a country, we have a very short window to harness, because we are about to become the newest oil producers in the world. And with oil comes something called the Dutch disease, where oil flips the economy and how the economy is organized into ways which are more than one. Now, where oil, with the Dutch disease, oil starts accounting for a lot more of GDP, leaving the rest of the economy to account for a much smaller part. And that usually leaves other sectors struggling. So the small window that we have in this era, which opportunity COVID gives us, is for us to rethink of how we can get more labor-intensive programs to put more of our people back to work, irrespective of what COVID is doing, before we can get into the COVID disease. Now, work is one of the things that provide pride to people. It is one of the ways in which people feel responsible and contribute to society. It is one of the ways in which it's one of the things we can call a rite of passage from being a child to adulthood, when somebody starts to contribute to society, to their family, and the world as a whole through them having a job and being finally called a responsible citizen. Therefore, it is something that provides much more than money to the working population. It provides vocational experience. It affords the youth a valuable opportunity to interact with people outside family and peers. And it forces people to make decisions in a variety of circumstances. And we also see that it gives people a feeling of responsibility and independence. Furthermore, the money earned as a result of employment reduces financial dependence on adults, and helping adults recognize adolescents as contributing to the well-being of both the family and the society in general. National Development Plan 3 states that adequate investment in people, Uganda will be able to harness the demographic dividend. However, a few things stand in the way to this, according to the National Development Plan. Our demographic indicators present a challenge, first with the Human Development Index being only 0.516, and that classifies us as low human development globally, okay? With that, we are ranked 162nd out of 189 countries, which is not a very good place to be. Then, on the level of the Human Capital Index, we rank at 38%, and that simply means that a child born in Uganda is expected to achieve only 38% of their productive potential age at age 18, of their productive potential by age 18, 38%. And it is not still a very good place to be. However, as we continuously assign people more responsibilities, help them become more independent, this is something that we can get on the good side of. Having a statistical snapshot at where we fall in the unemployment area, PricewaterhouseCoopers, in its COVID report for Uganda, looked at 13% of Uganda's GDP being contributed by people downtown. These are people we call our Subsidy, people in arcade and that kind of thing. They contribute 13% to our GDP. For all we know, during the lockdown, their imports went down more than 70%. Most of their employees were seated at home having no means to earn an income. Tourism contributing 7.7% to our GDP, employing more than 700,000 people directly, is also at a standstill, with most of these people still seated at home. Now, every time we look at one of these numbers, 700,000 people, it should be something that translates in direct jobs. However, the indirect jobs lost as a result, because most of these people, 700,000 people, have border men, they have maids at home, they have shops where they buy things. So there is a multiplicity of factors and other people who lose jobs as a result of these 700,000 people losing jobs. In the presidential address, the president noted that during the lockdown, only 200 factories were working out of the 4,000. That meant that staff of 3,800 industries were rendered redundant during the lockdown, and they lay on one of the areas in the spectrum of unemployment. Now, not everybody is in the same place when we talk about this thing called unemployment. A number of people are underemployed, which means they are taking on jobs much lower than what they are capable of doing. We have also noted that a number of people have had their salaries cut, and this has affected their financial planning and a lot of things in their livelihoods. We have some of the people who are on residual unemployment. They've been followed, they live without pay, and some of them are just not certain when things will get back to normal. We have part of the people who are in the uncertain zone, and this is especially in the hospitality sector. Even the teachers right now, they're not sure when the schools are going to open. Most of them are no longer earning a salary. Then we have the bars and the hotels, they're just uncertain. And the other day I was seeing teachers who have taken on brickmaking from a certain school just in order to beef up their income. We have people who have outrightly lost their jobs, and then we have those ones who have who are simply continuing on their level of unemployment, who currently are at 52%, or 10.1 million people, according to the Ministry of Labor report. Unemployment exposes a few gaps in our economy as a result. First is the resources which should have, and the basic training which should have made sure that even when people are not within the office, people continue working. These resources had not been utilized adequately, and people have had to forcefully learn. Those who have failed to learn, many of them are sitting at home unemployed as a result. Zoom meetings, and the reason why we're having this online today is one of the outcomes. However, it was a gap. It is something that we have had to learn along the way. And if this gap had been filled earlier, most likely we wouldn't have been having as many people unemployed as a result of COVID. We've had a lack of open networking systems for employees. We have most firms have only one way of working, one method, and that is you work on site. And that is when we consider productive. Okay. Then the human capital and legal policy framework is something that we also noted was a bit outdated and modeled on the wage and oil production model. And yet, right now, we have a lot of youth getting into a kind of employment where they don't produce things, but somehow they are working, but you can't attach their work to things, to a specific service. And we need policy frameworks in that line. Then, one of the gaps also that was noted is lack of a clear plan for business sustainability in event disaster, as we've seen some countries where governments have come in to support companies, take on payrolls so that they can stabilize to ensure that people don't lose jobs. The question remains whether we can afford such a scheme, or we could open up a discussion on the foregoing. The World Bank Group identified a few reasons why our Ugandan job market hasn't been growing. And here we want to highlight just 10 of them. It will be bullet form in the interest of time. First, the trend. 5-year average economic growth for Uganda has been slowing down. When economic growth is slowing down, it means that most of these companies cannot take on new employees. But yet, on the other hand, our labor force has been growing and accelerating. Every year, universities are churning out more than 70,000 new graduates, and yet less than 10% of them can be absorbed into the economy for waged employment. Access to jobs is deteriorating. The quality of jobs is deteriorating.
Did we lose Brian? Okay. Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Please go ahead. Your video had frozen for a bit, but I think we're now fine, and you just have 4 minutes. So if you could bring it to a close. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yeah, so a few opportunities on the horizon that come out are, one, adopting working from home methodologies, helping businesses reduce expenses on things like office space, and therefore increasing the opportunities for expansion. Then business efficiency. We've seen that businesses which have gone on to utilize online methods have expanded and are ready to employ more people. The involvement of government in ensuring that economic actors prioritize national content is an opportunity that that we can harness, especially where government realizes that a Ugandan company can be able to produce some of these things, and supporting them. We know many of them are weak, and that is why imports have been taken on. But supporting these companies towards increasing the number of people they employ is an opportunity we have. We have a young population. That is a big thing. Then regional integration. South-to-South trade has always been the missing link to Africa developing as a whole. And with COVID, we have seen inward-looking policies where we couldn't import things from China. You had to look, where can I get them? Does Kenya have it? Does Tanzania have it? And so that increases the number of jobs available on the continent as a result. And then UDB and UDC coming in to support and scaling industries which otherwise would not have taken off. That is a big opportunity. And then machine and human integration to increase productivity and outcomes. A few of the recommendations that we can give at this moment in time is that as a country, we need to develop a system of managing unemployment rather than programs. We realize that a few organizations and NGOs have tried to do some work in this space, but we need a proper government system. It should be the way you can walk into a health center, the way you can walk to a school, and you get services there. We need a proper employment bureau going forward. This employment bureau should be something that collects information on who is unemployed, can be able to retrain them, and then link them to employment opportunities. Then economic interventions must seek to ensure that employment growth and productivity increase. So rather than just giving, let's say, the way they have deferred payee, the way they have deferred NSSF payments and that kind of thing, most of the countries, when you look at Netherlands, when you look at Germany, they give this intervention tagged on the company, keeping people employed and not reducing their payroll. Prepared for post-COVID so that they do not have to decide between social distancing at work and letting people and laying off people. This requires a lot of planning, which companies need to be supported to achieve. Then efficiency in government systems. For all we've seen in different reports, when government agencies are more efficient, URA, UNBS, URSB, it helps companies do much more and achieve so much more, so that instead of having to line up at URSB or at UNBS, if I can get that done in the shortest time possible, usually it helps company growth, which translates into employing more people as a result. Retraining people in this day and age, for all who have lost jobs, we all know that some jobs might just never come back. And so it is important that we equip people with new skills for the next job that is remaining, something which hasn't come out so far in the government planning that we have seen in the COVID era. Lowering the internet cost is critical because most of the work is moving online. And last week in the discussion, we noted that internet arrives in Kampala at $1, but yet the final consumer gets it at like $280. So if we can lower the cost of internet, more people will get back to work. Harnessing opportunities in agriculture is very important because this is where our fallback position lies as a country, and we need large-scale agriculture uptakes in order to get more people back to work. A few questions remain for our policymakers, which hopefully we can be able to discuss, like what alternatives exist for those who have lost their jobs. Then identification of mechanisms, so to put mechanisms to put in place so that people are affected by COVID unemployment can be identified so that they are helped. It is something that policymakers will need to look into. Then having unemployment or employment be the center of all interventions. Most of these advanced economies, we notice that for every project, the first thing that is pointed out is how many people are going to be employed by it. I guess my time is up, and just to thank you for listening in.
Thank you very much, Brian. And if you could go to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, participants are already asking questions. I see many of the questions are around whether we can actually rely on oil and gas, like many of our plans seem to be doing right now. But all panelists, thank you very much for responding to the questions that are in the Q&A. Ladies and gentlemen, right now we'd like to get your opinion on something. So we'd like to put up our poll question, and please just speak the option that applies most to you, the one that you think is the most viable. And our first poll question is, which sector would, with the right incentives, deliver the fastest results in absorbing unemployed youth? Which sector would, with the right incentives, deliver fastest the results in absorbing unemployed youth? Is it agriculture, household enterprise, industry, or business process outsourcing through technology, e.g. global call centers? Excellent. I can see that you are responding. Panelists, please don't try to respond. The computer will not allow you to. Only the participants can respond. And okay, as it stands right now, majority of us are saying agriculture is the right sector that would absorb most of Uganda's unemployed youth if the right incentives were put there. Coming in second position is industry, and then household enterprise and business process outsourcing are tied. Okay, we'll just allow a few more seconds and then we'll close the poll. Okay, excellent. We can end the poll there. So the poll results, 58% of you have said agriculture, 20% have said industry, and then we have 11% for both household enterprise and business process outsourcing through technology. Thank you very much. In about 30 minutes, we will have another poll question. I'd like now to invite our first discussant, Mr. Moses Segawa. He is a partner with Sebalu and Lule Advocates and is a specialist employment and employee benefits practitioner. He advises on both non-contentious and contentious matters and acts for a range of sectors, sector-leading organizations in the private sector as well as governmental agencies. He has been at the forefront of guiding employers on their obligations under the 2006 labor laws and works with general and in-house counsel and employment advisors in handling employment issues. This includes specialized matters such as transfer of undertaking, corporate restructuring, and labor law compliance audits. Moses' market-leading pension practice handles the full spectrum of pension matters. He advises on benefit setup, drafting of trust deeds and rules, registration of schemes, commercial matters, and the restructuring, migration, and liquidation of pension funds. Moses has since 2013 been ranked as a leading lawyer by Chamber and Partners, a leading directory of business lawyers, and recently received a favorable mention in the latest edition of Chamber's Global 2020, where he is recognized as an attorney who is very knowledgeable on labor issues. In the 2019 edition, it was said his practice includes advising prestigious corporate clients as well as governmental agencies on complex contentious and non-contentious matters in this sector. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me our first discussant, Mr. Moses Segawa. Counsel, over to you.
Thank you, Gabriel. That was a very long introduction. I don't know if it was me you're talking about, but thank you for your kind.
I'll just say I cut some of the things out.
Well, and good morning to our, do I call them viewers or participants and online engagers. I also like to thank CASO for giving me this opportunity to share my experience in this space. And I would also like to thank the main presenter today, Brian, for the paper that has properly articulated the effects of COVID-19 on the employment scenario in Uganda. I will perhaps just add to or supplement on his paper in as far as to bring out areas that I think would be useful to to understand. And just for the sake of time, I won't go so too long, but perhaps to say that for us to understand the impact that COVID-19 has had on the employment sphere, one has to perhaps unpack the structure of the Ugandan employment landscape. Definitely, it's not one that is foreign or strange to what we know it thematically. We all know that the relationship of employer and employee is perhaps the center of everything under heaven. That relationship of master-servant, as it was once called, is a very ancient relationship. And over the course of time, man or humans have progressed around this relationship. Therefore, today in contemporary terms, this relationship speaks to our economics in as far as the owners of capital who deploy their capital have to deploy it in an efficient manner, and they will obviously the most out of their capital by paying as little as they can. The other side, who have the workers who would want to get the most of their labor's worth. And in that tangle, labor law comes in. I will speak from being a labor lawyer. I will obviously have to add the legal dimension. But because of that tangle, which is not always a smooth one, labor law always comes in to balance the bargaining power or enhance the bargaining power of the employees, who are usually the weaker party. So over the course of time, we have seen that our politics, as we know them, have been about trying to mediate this dynamic. And in the mediation of that dynamic, we have seen labor systems evolve, which today, and if we speak to the Ugandan situation, the labor system that we inherited from England was more of, one that was born out of the Industrial Revolution, the first Industrial Revolution. So thematically, our labor law or our labor system is one that is akin to the English model. It was more inclined to the capitalist, in other words, more favorable to the employers. And that would mean around it were as such, and traditionally has been structured as a model. That model, which has been preferred for the longest time, however, has been progressively, it's been in a progressive transition, whereby today, and by the manpower survey done by UBOS, it was estimated that I think about only 45% of employees now have, in the private sector, now have contracts that are of a permanent nature. And in the public sector, I think it's about 55%. So that would mean that most of our labor force is in an arrangement that is not secured in a permanent employment. So bearing in mind that our policy laws are more focused on the primary labor market, where we have perhaps the statistics show it's about those in the formal sector, about 1 million out of the 9 to 10 million of the engaged labor force. So that means the coverage of our policy system is very low. So we have all our laws and all our arrangements, our policy arrangements, which are very good, but whose coverage is for a very small section of the population. So even without COVID, we already had a serious crisis in terms of policy coverage. In terms, very few of our working population are involved in effective, in the effective labor market, the primary market. And most of them are engaged in the informal or the secondary market, whereby they're employed as on short-term contracts, if they're lucky, on temporary contracts, or as casuals. That means that even with a lot of work that has been done by the government of Uganda and ILO in trying to extend the social security safety net and protective legislation to enhance the protection of workers, a lot of them do not benefit from these policy reviews because they are still trapped in the secondary market or the secondary labor market. And the transition into the primary formal labor market is very difficult. There are very many bottlenecks,
Right.
amongst which we could say skilling, or mostly skilling and the transferability of skills. So with the coming of COVID, we found that we already had a situation that was perhaps untenable, and COVID only just comes to bring into sharp focus the need to have a whole policy rethink so that we can try and restructure how we model our labor system to ensure that the majority of the workforce, which is about 20 million or 19 million, are included into the formal primary labor market, from which they can have a better protection, better dividends, better pay, etc. etc. So in my view, I think that what COVID did was to just bring into sharp focus of a problem which we already have, and even those who were comfortable, I mean, many of those are also now being pushed out, and the element of social exclusion is being increased, which would translate into higher crime and mental health issues and many of such. So with COVID, I think for me comes a reawakening for us to think deeply about our youth. They've talked about entrepreneurship, high entrepreneurial levels of our country. I'm not one of those who thinks that's very positive. There is positivity in that, but most of it is as a result of the fact that many of these youth have failed, or our workforce has failed to be engaged in the formal workforce, and therefore are forced into being entrepreneurs before they actually are ready. And that's why the failure rate is very high. But again, that said, it only brings into sharp focus the questions of skilling, and government has done some work in creating there's an act for vocational training and etc. If more youth included and the scope of that is extended to more, perhaps we could have more skilled working youth. But just to emphasize a little on how this traditional model, which has persisted, we have had a problem of a disconnect, a policy disconnect from what the policy gurus have and what the bureaucrats structure as policy and what we have in the normal course. That disconnect is most of what we find to be the problem, because this disconnect means that we have laws that tend to favor the traditional employment model. Yet the workforce is changing very fast. Globalization has ensured that the conventional contract of employment as we knew it, being permanent and pensionable, is no longer viable. And even the way that we work is changing fast. So even how we secure and how we structure the social security safety net in ensuring that there's job security for those who are employed, as much as that is a good thing, it only creates vulnerability in as far as incentivizing employers to employ more people. Because if they know that there is limited scope in, of flexibility, hiring and firing, then they employing more people. So one of the things that I would say is very critical is to responding to the flexible labor market, making the labor market more flexible to allow employers, move easily from the traditional contract models into the more flexible ones where, employees can be migrated into different categories of contracts or more flexible work arrangements. And I know that our Employment Act is a lot more flexible in terms of the working hours. They don't have to be 9 to 5. They can be anytime. That's a positive. And doing business report has shown that, there's flexibility in that area. But we see now that there's a very changing, the work, how work is arranged is changing very fast. And our policy framework is not changing as fast as this. So in my view, I think, we need to be more flexible in structuring our policy and laws to allow capital to flow freely. Because if you restrict capital, you will have a problem. It will fly, it will work around you. There are models like agency work, outsourcing, etc., which end up being utilized by the employers. So COVID, in the context of COVID, we have to understand that the old command and control, top-down regulatory method of enhancing or protecting the rights of those who already have jobs, as good as it is, those few have jobs are secure, but you leave so many outside of the social security safety net. Therefore, I would propose that there's need to have a soft law approach whereby you incentivize employers to employ more, not to use labor outsourcing and things of the like. So
there was an attempt from the ministry to do that, and we will get your assessment on that when we come to the Q&A.
Okay, is my time up?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Segawa. We already had a crisis in our labor sector. COVID just helped us focus on it. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I'd like now to introduce and invite our next discussant, Ms. Lucille Kasalamwa. She is the current Officer, Employment Services at KCCA, that's Kampala City Council Authority, where she has served for over 8 years. She's an experienced administrator with a demonstrated history of working in government, especially youth empowerment and skilling. She is skilled at events management, teamwork and team building, public speaking, and training. She's also a strong human resource professional in human capital development. ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Lucille Kasalamwa, you are welcome to give us your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Gabriel, for the introduction. I greet you, my fellow discussants, and our special guest today, Honorable Wandera. Secondly, I'd like to also appreciate the general public for taking time to listen into the conversation. And to Kaso, thank you for the opportunity given to me to add a few grains of salt to our soup today, which is work, employment, and the COVID-19. Like Brian aptly put it, the pandemic has greatly disrupted the nature of employment, both formal and informal, across the globe, and Uganda is no exception. The already struggling labor market is now being tested further on its tenacity to manage the challenges presented by COVID-19. In my area of work, we focus on addressing youth unemployment, and according to a recent policy brief on the world of work and COVID-19 by United Nations, June 2020, youth have been placed among the hardest hit groups together with persons with disabilities, refugees, older persons, among others. In addition to that, prior to the pandemic, cities and nations have been grappling with high levels of youth unemployment, and I would like to mention that 70% of Uganda's population is at the age of 30 and below. Gabriel earlier mentioned that it's important to investment in people is key. And in light of the earlier mentioned struggle against youth unemployment, KCCA is operating 2 youth centers whose interventions are geared towards reducing youth unemployment by equipping young people with requisite skills and knowledge for the labor market with support from different partners. The KCC Employment Services Bureau focuses on ICT training because we believe this is an enabler in any environment, life skills development, enterprise development, and entrepreneurship training, as well as job linkages. We also have the iServe Youth Program that focuses on hosting graduate volunteers for purposes of gaining work experience. We currently are hosting cohort 4 of agriculture graduates who have done a tremendous job in supporting our urban farmers during this season. We also have the Kabalagala One Stop Youth Center, which focuses on equipping youth with vocational skills for employment. We have vocations like briquettes. This is making charcoal out of garbage, making bags, hairdressing, beauty therapy, among others. We also ensure that our young people or the beneficiaries of our programs are interested in learning simple urban agriculture methods that can be replicated in small areas of residence. This is done at our Chanja Agriculture Resource Center. We train them in things like creating food towers, hanging gardens. This gives an opportunity to people to grow vegetables in their homes for consumption, but as well as for sale. And I think this is something that could be an alternative to our unemployment challenge. We also operate government grants and loans to communities for economic empowerment. And lastly, we have Labor Administration Department that focuses on conflict resolution between employers and employees. We, however, have not been spared by the pandemic because our work requires face-to-face interactions with young people, and we have been forced to reinvent our service delivery. For example, we are looking into delivering some of these trainings digitally. Now, COVID challenges to the world of work and employment. Like Brian earlier mentioned, we are seeing reduced salaries, layoffs, loss of incomes, underemployment. Businesses are now focusing on staying afloat, hence cutting down costs, and this has resulted in letting go of employees. A salary is an income to the employee, but an expense to the owner or the employer. COVID has also exposed how the bigger percentage of our population lives on hand to mouth. This is an area of study to find solutions. People do not have alternative sources of income. COVID has tested the strength of sustainability plans of individuals, companies, and sectors. And then finally, we've discovered that jobs are not eternal. But also, what are the opportunities? Because everything that has a disadvantage, I believe there is an advantage. Creativity. We're seeing hairdressers now going back to the days of home-to-home service delivery. People have had the time to actualize sleeping ideas that can earn them income, for example, writing books. People are on self-improvement journeys. Public speakers like coaches, this is their opportunity to thrive even more. There is also much access and knowledge, much access to knowledge and information through different webinars like this one, and how people can be able to go through these difficult times. And this was not the case before. People are not privy to some of this information. People have also discovered alternative forms of employment to stay afloat. There is someone who decided that in their rental compound, they will be the ones responsible for selling airtime to their fellow tenants. It's an edge for ICT specialists to thrive. Change management champions, it is your time to support organizations to make amicable solutions, amicable changes within this season. For businesses, it is a chance for you to get to know clients better and find ways of serving them. And also this might increase your client base. Now, possible solutions and recommendations to our young people. We are tech savvy and social media is a marketing tool. So create a positive narrative on your page about the work you do. I know of a young girl who started off by sharing different hairstyles on dummies for brides, and she's right now posting clients for the work that she has done. It is time to avail ourselves to opportunities. If your neighbor in the compound bakes cakes, it is not enough. Don't stop at appreciating their aroma. Please go see how you can kindly be engaged. Opportunities will present themselves. Opportunities will take on those who present themselves. Make use of available information seminars. I guarantee you will pick something. Take advantage of the energy and the ability that we have right now to pursue work. Profile yourself better by capturing your greatest strength. To the former workers, recruitment may change from just knowledge to additional skills possessed. Identify areas of work and reskill yourself through short courses. It is time to become strategically agile. You can propose to management to do a simple survey on how best to serve clients in this season and propose solutions. It is about being proactive and making ourselves relevant. If we are not part of the solutions, we become an expense. It's time to reposition yourself to become relevant. How can you offer support in different sections other than your work, which are essential but yet overwhelmed? Being willing to receive knowledge and skills from anyone. Digital skills are relevant in this time. It's also time to make use of the networks that we have. To companies and employers, it's time to make use of change management champions to help us with this process, because this is what they study and they can do it better. We make use of our labor officers who operate under the legal framework and can support you to arrive at amicable solutions. Dialogue to train workers to adapt to the digital environment. Options like shift work. You may not lay off everyone, but work can be done in shifts. On national level,
Lucia, did we lose you? Okay, looks like we did lose Lucia. Okay,
yes.
you're back. Okay, you're back. Sorry, we'd lost you for a second.
Sorry.
Yes, if you could conclude, yes.
Okay, I'm concluding. One, I would like to borrow a leaf from South Africa. They have set up a deliberate task force to find measures that can address the impact of COVID-19 on the employment within the country. And I recently learned that the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development is conducting a research on the impact of COVID-19, and I think this is a good start. We need to tailor-make policies to handle especially hit target groups and sectors. Also, most nations have opted to support small enterprises because they have so many people that they employ. And an example is Malaysia has developed a wage subsidy program for workers, and enterprises receiving support for at least 3 months are required to retain their workers for at least 6 months, but also train them to maneuver the dictator environment, expanding the social protection to include persons with disabilities, increase on the range of programs meant to intervene to certain groups. On the whole, as I conclude, let us look at agriculture as a means of income. A lady at home, a lady by the place where I stay, recently started selling food from her garden at the veranda, and this was not the case before. My own auntie has decided to sell the avocados in her them out. And now more than ever, we need financial management skills to help us maneuver the times. And finally, the Ubuntu spirit. It's time to help one another. I know an organization that raised money for their small business beneficiaries, like vegetable sellers, and they did this through well-wishers and their networks. Thank you so much. Gabriel, I get back to you.
Thank you very much, Lucia. And we will want to hear more about that training bureau that KCCA is running. We will come to you with questions, but if you could visit the Q&A tab, just like the rest of the panelists are doing. Participants are putting their contributions and their questions there. Just respond to the questions that are there. Dear participant, if you have a question or a comment, please use the Q&A tab. We will be visiting that, and the rapporteurs are taking a record of what is there. I'd like now to have your opinion on something. If the team could put our next poll question up. Okay, as we wait for, okay, there it is. Our poll question is, which of the following presents the greatest challenge to youth? Inadequate training and skilling, a difficult business environment, and then lack of funding and mentorship for startups. Which of the following presents the greatest challenge to youth? Inadequate training and skilling, a difficult business environment, lack of funding and mentorship for startups. The votes are coming in, and majority of you at the moment are saying inadequate training and skilling. Well, lack of funding and mentorship for startups has caught up. The one that is not receiving as many picks is a difficult business environment. So which of the following presents the greatest challenge to youth? Is it 1, inadequate training and skilling, 2, a difficult business environment, or 3, lack of funding and mentorship for startups? All right, majority of us have taken the poll, and majority of us are saying inadequate training and skilling. Thank you very much for participating in that poll question. Our next one will be coming up shortly. I'd like now to introduce and invite our next discussant, Mr. Gideon Padagawa. He is Executive Director, Private Sector Foundation, Uganda. He is a statistician by training and taught at the Institute of Statistics and Applied Economics, Makerere University from 1992 until the year 2000, when he joined the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda as a senior policy analyst. He later rose through the ranks as manager and director for policy and advocacy before proceeding to work with Uganda Manufacturers Association as executive director in 2008. Later in 2010, he rejoined PSFU, that's Private Sector Foundation Uganda, and assumed the post of executive director. He holds a master's degree in development economics, master's in development studies, econometrics, and quantitative economics from the International Institute of Social Studies of Erasmus University, Rotterdam, and a postgraduate diploma in environment management from Maastricht School of Management in the Netherlands. Those of you who know him know that his profile can go on and on, but it is an absolute pleasure to invite Mr. Gideon Padagawa. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. And a very good morning to my colleagues on the panel, a very good morning to our keynote presenter, and a very good morning to all the participants. I'm happy to be here with you this morning to really try to dissect this very important subject on jobs or employment, and particularly so for the young people in this country amidst this challenge that we are all sailing through. And I'm happy for you all, the organizers, for this conference. I think, first of all, let me, because it has made some key revelations, which are of critical importance as we go forth to discuss this subject. In this country, which is almost half of the population. It's about 19 million out of 40 or 42 million. So it's more or less half of the population. And the question is, how many of, or how much of this labor force is actually employed, is actually having something to do, formal or informal, whether it's government or private sector. And obviously for government, as we all know, government is employing about 700, just under 1 million. So if you're talking about a labor force of 19 million, then you are really looking to the private sector to answer the questions on how to fix this problem. The labor force, and much of it is actually of the young people. I think the structure of our population cascades through. When you look at the entire population, much of it is actually young people. And I think the statistics has it that 16.7 years, 16.7 years, that is the mean age. I think Mr. Wandera will attest to this. And what are all these people looking for? They are looking for opportunities. They are looking for opportunities for jobs. And I think all interventions that we now have must assure these young people of increased livelihoods and a sustainable future. That is going to be very important going forward, even as we sail through this challenge of COVID. Now, in the presentation, it was also clear that Uganda entrepreneurial countries in the entire world, which is a very good thing. But I think if you went back and asked how many of us, especially the young people, how many of the young people are actually creating opportunities? Because I think the challenge has been that many of these young people are looking for opportunities, but only a few of them are creating opportunities. So out of this entrepreneurship that we are mentioning, is it 70% created by the young people? With what skills? And I think you just run a poll question. What is stopping the young people from actually becoming, getting into employment or creating opportunities or becoming entrepreneur? Many people are saying skills, others are saying mentorship, and so on and so forth. And we need to work around all these things. Uganda is is one of the most highly entrepreneurial, but very, very low on human capital development. And I think, again, that is a revelation that is coming from the presentation by Brian. Human capital development, if you look at the index, we are very, very low ranking on the index. When you talk about entrepreneurship, starting businesses, we are very high up there. No wonder then businesses that establish, because human capital is one of the most important factors of production that we know of in any enterprise, any production entity. If you fail on human capital, you cannot progress. So if we are very, very low ranking on human capital development, then it goes without saying that businesses that are being established, no wonder, cannot last 1 year. Because the most important resource is not prepared, is not well prepared to be able to partake of the challenges that come through. And this leads me to the other key issue on who then creates jobs. Is it the farm, the producing entity, or is it the worker that is looking for these opportunities? Who creates them? I think the illusion has been that the private sector is the creator of jobs. We create opportunities. But the person who indeed must be creating jobs is the job seeker. I think that is coming as a surprise. It is the job seeker. The question is, how well prepared are you to partake of this opportunity that I'm putting across as private sector in terms of job, employment? And I'm looking at three things here. One, you must have gone to school. That's obviously clear. Two, you must have trained in some skill. And the question that we at PSF are always asking people to ask themselves is, what can I do? What did I study is immaterial, is irrelevant. What can I do? How can I be applied? And that goes beyond the brain to talk to the hands, to talk to the heart, the integrity, the trust that you have, and things like that. You're talking about hard skills and soft skills. And my colleague from the employment industry will tell you that the most important things that the employers are looking for are actually someone being applied. If you cannot be applied, you can't be deployed. And if you can't be deployed, you cannot be employed. This is very important for the young people to hear. Until you are able to be deployed, and that speaks to skills, both hard and soft, you cannot be employed. Even if it means self-employment goes with a lot of integrity. Because you are going to interface with customers, you are going to interface with many people that ultimately will have the power to close that industry, to close that business, to close that company that you have opened because you do not serve the purpose. So when we talk about mentorship, coaching, when we talk about career guidance, issues of mindset change and change of attitudes, especially for the young people, this is what we mean, that you must be job ready. That's what it means. So for me, when you talk about skills, I'm looking at a wholesome thing. I'm looking at skills relating to entrepreneurship. I'm looking at skills related to management. I'm looking at marketing skills. I'm looking at hands-on skills, and I'm looking at the heart. Do you have what it takes to work with your other people in the work environment? Because you may be highly educated, you may be highly applied in terms of hands-on, skills, hard skills. I can do carpentry, I can do this, I can do that. Okay, managerial skills, yes, you have. But the thing is, can you constitute yourself into a person that can relate interpersonal skills and so on and so forth, to be able to have partnerships and things like that? Because partnerships depend on trust. In business, you cannot grow without partnerships. A bank is a partner. An insurer is a partner. A transporter is a, so you must be able to have those interpersonal relations, and you must have the trust. So someone has entrusted you with something, you have gotten a loan, you have gotten this or the other, you must be able to have the heart to pay back that loan and things like that, just as an example. So for me, it goes well beyond simply establishing an enterprise, being entrepreneur, to really speak to the three areas of skills: the intellectual skills, the hands-on skills, and the soft skills. Soft skills actually constitute 50% of what the employers are looking for. And that is most of the time one of the reasons why you find employers in this country are looking for workers and they never find them. They have opportunities, but they never find workers. And that is the reason you find workers are looking for jobs and they never find them. And yet jobs are there.
All right.
The next thing I wanted to allude to, the next thing I wanted to allude to really is this whole issue of business closures. During COVID, we have undertaken a number of surveys with partners. Even we ourselves, we have actually run a business barometer. We called it a business barometer to try and understand, especially for SMEs, what is happening. If, for instance, the lockdown went on for the next 3 months to 6 months and so on, And we discovered that 70% of these SMEs will have shut down. Should this lockdown go on for another 3 months? And what does that mean for employment? Because more than 80% of the employment in this country is accounted for by small and medium enterprises. Why? Because they account for 90% of the private sector. And remember, we are talking about a private sector that is fully accountable for the 19 million labor force. So if 90% of this private sector is going to close in the next 6 months, then you really begin to see that we are treading on very, very turbulent waters. And what did we do as PSFU? We worked cap in hand to government to demand a stimulus, an economic stimulus, which was actually largely granted. If you read the State of the Nation, if you read the budget, there have been a lot of promises here and there to really make sure that SMEs have got the liquidity. Their cash flows are, they are quite well on how they are moving with their cash flows and so on, but also how they borrow money, the cost of money, issues of the areas, how they settle these areas, and so on and so forth. And actually, government has been responsive, has been positive about this, and we are beginning to see fruits come. But the thing is, when COVID came, I must warn everyone, it really got us pants down. On food security, this should have been done by government and by the private sector in a PPP manner. But if we were not able to, even for a simple thing like food, we were not able to support our population. Forget about employment, because people are looking for permanent income streams, yes, but if people cannot feed themselves, then they can't work. So first things first, were we able, or could we have worked better in terms of establishing food storage facilities to be able to cater for the labor, because the labor must be alive and must be healthy for it to be able to work for you. Now, if they are not alive and healthy, and that's why we had to go for the health issues first, even before you talk about business sustenance, we had to go for health issues. Can people be alive first? Because people are the ones that are going to drive these businesses. So the issue of food security was critically important. And we wanted, and when you run the area poll, and you're asking which sector would mean a lot for the youth in terms of skills, in terms of jobs and so on, no wonder it was agriculture. Agriculture value chain is the biggest value chain that can provide employment for our people in production, in processing and value addition, but also in agricultural marketing. And at PSF, we are now promoting what we are calling a lead farm model, market-driven production. And what that means is that you have a company. I will give an example, a company like the breweries, Uganda Brewery or Nile Brewery, and they are working with the sorghum or barley farmers, and we are organizing the producer groups down there to be able to supply the requisite materials to the breweries. And then what this means, therefore, along the way, you have people that are being mobilized to aggregate production, and we are focusing on the young people. And this is a program that now is being supported by MasterCard. We think that through this program, we should be able to resuscitate businesses that have previously been impacted by COVID, but especially so with particular attention on employing young people. The focus really is going to agriculture. I thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. You have shared that you did a study, and if probably nothing is done in the next 3 months, 90% of SMEs will close. I hope we have solutions that can come in before, the 3 months, because some of the solutions we have even talked about here are relatively long-term solutions. But thank you very much, Mr. Gideon Padagawa. We will come back to you with questions. And again, a reminder to you and to all our panelists, please visit the Q&A. Many questions are there. And thank you, participants, for putting your questions there and for your contributions. I'd now like to invite our next panelist, to Mr. Padagawa. has even prompted by saying, you know, the employer will come and tell us. This is Mr. Douglas Opio. He's the Executive Director, Federation of Uganda Employers. And he is an experienced labor and employment expert with over 20 years of demonstrated history of working with local and international employers. He has also served for 4 years as the technical advisor of the East African Employers Organization in Arusha, Tanzania. He has also served for 4 years as the president of the Rural Agribusiness Incubator Support Enterprise in Kole and Lira districts in northern Uganda. 8 years as board chairman for the Rural Research and Development Innovations in Kole, and for 8 years also as national coordinator of Wage Indicator Foundation in Kampala. He holds, just pardon me, he holds an MBA from Amit University in India, a diploma, private sector growth and private sector development from Swedish International Development Agency, SIDA, an international training program, and a Bachelor of Development Studies from Makerere University. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now listen to Mr. Douglas Opio. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Quite a lengthy introduction. Thank you also to Brian. I think an excellent presentation. I appreciate it very much. And Castro for once again inviting me and giving me the opportunity to discuss what Brian has just presented. First, before I go into the presentation, and thank you so much, Gideon, I just want to say that a country is only as good as the quality of its people. We can talk about oil and all these other things, but at the center of our development should be the people, because we are only as good as our people. Now, I want to highlight a few things. I will start with those I see basically at the national level. I think COVID has provided us with the opportunity to rethink our focus on employment because we basically are not clear with the issues of employment. Even as I speak now, if you asked anybody, how many jobs were we targeting as Uganda to create in the financial year that ended, or even in the new budget that we have just passed, nobody knows it. So it's very difficult for us to plan for things that we are not deliberately targeting. So the first, COVID gives us an opportunity to try and see what are the kind of realistic employment targets that we can set, and where will the jobs come from? And then deliberately, we can then work towards ensuring that those jobs are in place. Of course, industrialization is very important for us, moving into a more modernized agriculture and all these things, but the transition should be done in a proper manner. Majority of our population at the moment are employed in agriculture. But also you have to realize that when we make agriculture more modernized, more large scale, more mechanized, it will mean it will be able to absorb very few people. So where will the rest of the people go? So it's important that the transition is well planned, and industrialization and the service sector should have grown to absorb the people we think should be living in agriculture. I very much agree with Gideon. Agriculture still remains one of the most important opportunities that we have for us to grow Uganda, because that's where majority of the people are. The contribution from the presentation of Brian speaks of about 25% of our GDP coming from it. But we know that it's employing nearly 80% or even more of our population. So if agriculture employs over 80%, contributing only 25% to the GDP, you see the level of productivity there. That means the current level of productivity in agriculture is extremely low. And I thank PSFU for the initiative trying to develop the agricultural value chain. That's extremely important if we are to succeed in developing our country. And then, of course, the other thing which I want to acknowledge, the labor market is changing, especially the administration. I want to thank our guest speaker already in advance. Martin is here with us. But I think labor administration is improving. And if we can try and make that even a little stronger, especially taking the advantage of COVID to increase workplace inspection, registration of workplaces, trying to ensure that employers have in place the necessary safety mechanism and all this, I think we can do a lot better. And then, of course, the labor laws are currently under review. It's a good opportunity for us to address certain gaps that we have already seen. For instance, the issue of work from home. A home is not defined as a workplace, and it's not even tackled at all. The issue of work from home is not addressed in our labor laws. The issue of digital work and how such contracts can be managed are not anywhere in our laws. So it's an opportunity for us to address that. We already had plans before in terms of establishment of job centers and shared workplace spaces. Now is the opportunity for us to accelerate those, make it possible for people who are unemployed to register, but also make it possible for people to have shared workspaces. Production now is using more advanced technologies. Individuals can't buy it, but they can share a lot of, for instance, the CNC machines. We no longer produce cups the traditional way, for instance. We can print them from a machine, but those machines cannot be bought by our SMEs. Neither can they fully utilize its capacity as an individual SME, but the government should fast track that, creating shared workspaces. And then, of course, the issue of investing in innovation. All of us acknowledge that we are a very entrepreneurial country, but the entrepreneurship is small scale. Most people are planning within their means. Our youth are not allowed to dream big, are not allowed to think big, because they only think within their means, within what they can afford. But if we have innovation funds, then it's possible for our youth to think of more bigger ideas, and then the impact or the multiplier impact in terms of the job creation and the other opportunities that come with it will be bigger. So we need to look at making funding available specifically to finance innovation, to finance this entrepreneurship potential that we already know exists, but it's underfunded. A lot of the monies we give at the moment is too small for it to have any meaningful impact. For instance, if you give somebody 5 million, the kind of investments they will do is very small scale, or even as a group of 5, it's 25 million. The kind of innovation, the kind of businesses that they can do still would be rather small. So it is important for us to focus on that. Everyone is speaking about how employers should be keeping people in employment and how we don't need to lay off. But I think it's increasingly reaching a level where the government has to come in. We need to consider the issue of wage subsidies. We have heard in the past how people speak about companies that are too big to collapse because they benefit society much more. It's an opportunity for us to engage collectively the government to support private sector investors to be able to, in a way, manage the wage costs that they have at the moment. So the issue of wage subsidies is very important. And then the other thing I want to talk about from the point of the employer. What I've discovered engaging employers during this period, a lot of them are overstaffed. We have a tradition in Uganda, everybody is basically full-time employment. So and that creates a lot of challenge when you have in a shop. The number of people who are employed are simply too many than the business can actually accommodate in an effective manner. Recently, for those of you who like football a lot, the Premier League, they were saying the wage bills are as high as 70% of the money they make. So 70% of, for instance, revenue of football clubs in the Premier League goes to wages. Now, when it's that high and there's any shock, it becomes very problematic to deal with it. The quickest way is the pay cut or the layoff. So it's important for us to address that, especially from the side of the employer. Look at the roles people are doing, try and redefine them, but also see, should every role be full-time? Maybe some could be part-time. That way we can preserve jobs for a longer time. If we want to keep everybody employed on a full-time basis, it might be much more challenging to do that. We are also aware, of course, now we are in an economy of what we're calling the gig economy. As an individual, tap into this opportunity. Change your mindset a bit. It's not the